So the president will announce his executive action on immigration during a primetime address tonight at 8 p.m. This after the president repeatedly said for years that it was not within his power to do just that. Listen.
I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair. Sometimes when I talk to immigration advocates, they wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works.
The problem is that I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed.
White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest joins me now. Josh, good morning. Thank you very much for being with us today. Good to have you. You hear all those statements. You've heard them over the past few days. The question is, what has changed? What changed the president's mind on this issue so completely?
Well, there are a couple of things that have changed, Martha. The first is, importantly, there's one thing that hasn't changed, which is the president can't take all the steps that were included in the bipartisan bill that passed by the United States Senate about a year and a half ago. So there are a number of things that won't get done through these executive actions. But the president is determined to use all of the authority that he has, that's vested in the presidency, to take the steps that can try to fix some of the problems that everybody acknowledges exist inside our broken immigration system. This is consistent with steps that were taken by President Reagan, President George H.W. Bush, and other presidents over the course of history that have used their executive power to address problems with our broken immigration system.
Well,
President Obama's going to do the same thing, and he'll announce it tonight.
Let me ask you about that. Because based on the president's own words that you just heard, I would imagine that when those moves were made, and many people think that they're very different from the sweeping moves that the president's about to make, that this president that we heard in those sound bites must have vehemently disagreed with those actions by Reagan and Bush if he felt the way he did, that it would be unwise, that it would be unfair, that it wouldn't be fair to those people waiting in line, and that no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million people who broke those laws should be held accountable. What happened to that?
Well, let's just be real clear, Martha, about what the president's view is. The president does believe that individuals who are in this country should come out of the shadows and they should get right with the law. That means that they should go back to the back of the line. That means they should pay taxes. It means they should learn English. So we should be clear about what the president's view is as it relates to the treatment of those individuals. And the fact is, the legislation that was passed, again, with bipartisan fashion through the Senate, strongly supported by the president, supported by the business community, the labor community, the evangelical community, even law enforcement. That is a piece of legislation that would deal with these individuals in a very orderly fashion that would bring them out of the shadows. Unfortunately, it's House Republicans who have blocked that piece of legislation and prevented us from actually dealing with them. So it's House Republican leaders that have perpetuated a terrible problem that everybody acknowledges exists. The president's going to use the authority that he has to try to solve some of those problems.
You can say that, but the fact is the president had wide berth to do just this in the first 2 years of his presidency. He had complete control on Capitol Hill and could have passed sweeping legislation then. Why didn't he do it then?
Well, I guess for a couple of reasons, Martha. You'll recall that we were also dealing with the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, so we had a few things on our plate. The fact of the matter is the president actually rolled up his sleeves.
Quite a few things now as well, and some people wonder why he would take on immigration now when we have so many global issues that they feel are more important at this moment. And why not wait for Congress to tackle it in January with the new crew?
Well, we would be happy to do that, and we will do that even after the president takes executive action. The truth of the matter, Martha, is that the Speaker of the House is not committed to actually bringing up this piece of legislation. That's why we're in this place in the first place. The president actually did roll up his sleeves, sit down and work with Democrats and Republicans in the Senate to pass a bipartisan, compromise, common-sense piece of legislation that'd be good for the economy, that'd be good for reducing the deficit, that would make a historic investment in border security. That's why the business community, the labor community, the law enforcement community, even evangelicals support that legislation. It's being blocked by House Republicans right now. So the president's going to take whatever.
The question becomes, that may be the case, exactly as you're saying. But the question becomes, the president said before that he simply didn't have the authority. He said, I'm not an emperor. I'm not a king. As much as I might like to change these things, if I don't have Congress on my side, I simply can't do it. And yet that's exactly what he's doing now.
And, Martha, there are some steps the president can't take because they require legislation. And that's why we continue to call on Congress to pass that bill. But there are some steps the president can take. He'll announce them tonight. And what we'll also make clear is what the legal justification is for those steps. And that legal justification will be entirely consistent with steps that were taken by President Reagan and President George H.W. Bush.
All right. Well, as I understand it, it will entail falling under prosecutorial discretion, basically saying that you can delay deportment for up to 5 million people. Is that correct?
Well, Martha, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. The president's got an important announcement that your viewers here on Fox can watch at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I encourage them to tune in and hear straight from the president what steps he's actually going to take.
All right. Well, he said in 2010 that to put an end to deportation until we have better laws, I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair. So he said back then that to delay deportation would be unwise and would be unfair. And from everything we're understanding, that is the way he's going to get around the law tonight, to say that he's using prosecutorial discretion. And you're saying that that's not the case. That's not what he's going to say, or you won't confirm that that's what he's going to say?
I'm just saying that I'm going to let the president make the announcement that he's going to make tonight from the Oval Office.
All right.
From here at the White House.
Just talk politics for a moment. You know,
okay.
A lot of people look at this and say, you know, the president said after the election that he understood, that he got the message. He saw that there was a sweeping Republican victory that really was sending a big message. And a lot of folks look at this move and say, wow. You know, why would you do this now? Why would you poison the well, so to speak, rather than wait until January and see what you can get out of this new group?
Well, again, Martha, because the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, who has blocked common sense immigration reform for the last 2 years, was asked right after the election whether or not he would commit to bringing up immigration reform legislation in the new Congress, and he wouldn't do it. So the fact of the matter is there's no reason to think that the new Republican-led Congress is actually going to take the kind of...
You don't even haven't given him a chance yet, though.
Well, but because we have actually given them a chance.
Yeah, but
they've been asked the question.
These people may have some influence on John Boehner. They might say, you know, look, let's make this something that we can do, because in many ways it might neutralize the impact that the Democrats would get by doing it if Republicans jumped on board. What about that possibility?
Well, two things about that. The first is there actually still does continue to be a possibility for John Boehner to relent. There's a piece of legislation that passed in bipartisan fashion by the United States Senate. It's supported by the business community, the law enforcement community, the evangelical community. John Boehner can allow that piece of legislation to come up for a vote. If it passes the House, the president will crumple up the executive actions that he's taking tonight, and he will sign that bill into law, because that bill would be good for the country, it'd be good for our economy, it'd be good for border security. The president would support it. Even after the president takes this executive action, if the response from Republicans is, we can't stand that executive action, we're going to pass legislation on our own, the president will look at that legislation, and if it's close to the Senate legislation, he'll sign it into law, and he'll eliminate his own executive action. The same is true next year. If Republicans do get their act together, John Boehner changes his mind and does decide to work in collaborative fashion, in bipartisan fashion, to support something that, to back something that the whole country supports, then the president would be happy to sign that bill. And if it meets the principles that are included in the Senate bill that's already passed, the president would be happy to sign that bill and have it supersede the executive action that he's announcing tonight. So tonight's action represents a first step. It does not eliminate the responsibility that Congress has to actually confront this important priority.
What do you say to those who say the president is trying to poison the well, that he's hoping that there'll be some sort of dramatic reaction from the GOP, that they'll try to defund the issue or even go as far as impeachment or you know, shutting down the government? What do you say about that?
I say that that's not what the president wants. It's not what the president supports. The president has indicated that there are going to be areas where we disagree. We've seen Congress over the course of the last couple of years vote more than 50 times to defund Obamacare. And not once have you heard me or anybody else who works in a senior position in this administration come forward and say, that has poisoned the well, and because of that vote, we're no longer going to work with House Republicans. That is a completely unreasonable position. We're going to disagree on things. I'm not suggesting that Republicans should fold on their principles. What I'm suggesting is we shouldn't allow a disagreement over one issue to be a deal breaker over every other issue.
Right.
We can try to work together on tax reform. There's some common ground to be found there. The president is a leading advocate of trying to open up overseas markets for American goods and services. He just spent a week in Asia trying to do that. We can work with Republicans over trade. We can work with Republicans even on investing in early childhood education. It's something that they've said they think would be a good idea. So there's some common ground we can find. We shouldn't allow this one issue to poison the well and prevent us from working together on other important issues.
All right. Josh Earnest, thank you very much. It's good to have you here as always. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Martha.
You covered